Now, do you know your gorillas from your Tank Girl, or your Terry Fu from your Doom Control? Well, if you do, and even if you don't, you're going to love the weird, wild and wonderful world of British graphic artist Jamie Hewlett, the subject of a hefty new TASCHEN monograph, subtitled Works from the Last 25 Years. Hewlett's colourful career has seen him creating groundbreaking comic strips, inspiring Hollywood blockbusters, or founding art pop adventurers Gorillaz with Blur frontman Damon Albarn, and achieving fine art success with a well-received exhibition at the TASCHEN Gallery in London a couple of years ago. With all this on the go, he still managed to find the time to put together this magnificent tome, packed with cartoons, comic characters, sketch, photography and ideas, archival gems, and much, much more. In fact, there's so much sheer stuff here that getting a handle on who Jamie Hewlett exactly is and how one defines him is a bit of a task. So when I called him up in Paris midway through the latest Gorillaz tour recently to ask him about the book, I began by asking him, how did he see himself?
A lot of people who don't know what I do, and they say, what do you do? It's always quite hard for me to sort of find a way of summing up what I do in a sentence, because obviously I've tried many different things, and I've gone from being a comic artist to moving into the music industry, doing operas, doing exhibitions at the TASCHEN Gallery, directing animation, directing live action. I mean, I've sort of tried my hand at most things, so it's very hard to explain that to someone, because they say, what do you do? And you say, I used to be a comic artist, but then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did this, and then you start to sound like you're a bit of a show-off. So there's no sort of precise sentence to explain it. So now I can just whip out my TASCHEN book, slam it on the table, and say, that's what I do.
So how did it feel when you look back over the finished product, the finished book?
I mean, it was probably a year of editing and redesigning and changing, and then we had something that was looking pretty good. It certainly is a wonderful way to look back at your career. So to have a book that you can look through and look at your career is quite a special experience, really.
Just looking through the book, you can see that, you know, obviously there was the huge hit that was Tank Girl, you did Get the Freebies, and then obviously there was Gorillaz, and there's so much stuff you've done. When you look back at all this stuff, do you think to yourself that you were looking for something in particular, or was it just this constant creative motion that kept pushing you on?
Well, I think when I started out, my dream from when I was a small child was to be a comic artist. I never thought I would be good enough to be a comic artist. It was like one of those dreams that you think will never come true. And I got a job drawing Tank Girl. That was pretty much my first job. It was a big success. And I think I probably spent 10 years drawing comics and did just about everything I wanted to do. And then the comic industry in England sort of died. And the only alternative for me and a lot of other British comic artists was to go to America. And I was offered a job at DC Comics, and I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to be doing sort of 26 pages of superhero comics every month. So I had to find a new job. You know, I kind of had a few wilderness years, especially after the Tank Girl movie, which was a huge flop and sort of damaged my reputation a little bit. But I was pretty young, and I kind of got, you know, sucked up by the whole Hollywood myth and was spat out the other side a little crumpled. So yeah, there was a period of time when there was no work. I was trying to find scraps of work in style magazines and teenage magazines, and there was nothing happening. And then I got in touch with the Face magazine, Richard Benson, who was a fan of my work, and I sort of knew him. And I just said, look, I'd like to do a comic strip in the Face every month. They were really into it. So I did that for a few years, Get the Freebies. And then I wrote and started drawing the second series, which was then called Fu Action. And just as it was about to start, Richard Benson left the Face, and they got a new editor, who was someone I didn't get along very well with. So that didn't happen. And then I was sort of back in the wilderness again.
So that's when you met Damon Albarn and started Gorillaz.
I'd known Damon since before Blur put their first album out. We both recently separated from girlfriends, and we shared an apartment, and we spent a year. I think we were 29 years old at the time, just partying and having fun. And we got on so well, and we realized that we had so much in common. We were very alike, and that we really wanted to do something together. And obviously, you know, I draw, he makes music. And we said, well, why don't we manufacture a band, or why don't we make an animated band? Because we were trying to think of something that was hard to do. And that was at the time of, Oasis and all this crap. To manufacture a cartoon band was like, no one is going to get behind us. We took it to the then head of Parlophone, Tony Wadsworth, and I had 2 drawings and Damon had 2 demos. And he said, I love it. We're going to sign you to do an album. And so off we went. It was a huge success. I think it sold like 8 million copies.
Wow. I remember when that first single came out, and the music reflected the visual style, I thought. And that's something interesting. Damon's got a very similar approach that you have. He's one of these people that likes to try everything.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Gorillaz did for Damon. It allowed him to experiment and explore his love of music, because, of course, with Blur, there is something that is expected of Blur. Even though they were always very different with every album, he still had to keep it within a certain framework that was Blur. Damon loves hip-hop and black music, and suddenly he was able to experiment, and I was able to experiment. Nobody was going to tell us what to do, which is great, because you have total freedom, and then you do your best work. And the funny thing is that on this new Gorillaz album, a lot of the younger artists who are performing with us, when we were making the album, they were saying to us, well, we were listening to the first album when we were 11 and 12, and we were really inspired by Gorillaz. And that was something else we did at that time, was we gave something to the younger generation. We were doing something good there, because that was, I grew up on the Specials and the Clash and the Sex Pistols, and, that was my inspiration. That's what I listened to as a kid. And I think you need to give that same sort of stuff to the younger generation, because they're going to be the next artists and musicians.
What did you grow up reading and looking at in terms of art?
Well, I was reading 2000 AD magazine. Then I was really into a lot of the European comic, Metal Hurlant, 1994. I was into Mobius, Richard Corbin. And then also I was obsessed with Mad magazine. That was really inspiring to me. But I was also into things like Norman Rockwell and stuff, and very early Marvel comics like The Art of Steve Ditko and Jack Davis. These kind of artists were inspiring me.
If you were starting out now, do you think you'd find it harder or significantly different to how you went about it originally?
It would probably be a lot harder, yes, because also the market is flooded with young artists, and I think it's harder to find a position or a place for yourself unless you come up with something that really stands out. I mean, there are easier platforms to present yourself today. The internet, if you've got something and it goes on the internet and it goes viral, then you've made it. But you have to have something to start with. Back in my day when I started out, it was harder to be noticed or to be seen if you had something good, because there weren't as many platforms to show your work. There's a lot of really good young artists around, and I look at some of them and I think, God, this person's really good. I'm glad I'm established. God damn.
Who do you recommend?
Oh, I'm not going to say, because I might have ripped them off, you see. I've been doing, as Morrissey used to say, cultural shoplifting.
All right, fair enough. We'll leave that one there. You have been in the last few years starting to work on fine art. Well,
I've always been able to draw in different styles. I mean, that's the whole thing of being a comic artist. It's something you learn very quickly. The reason for the Saatchi exhibition was I finished Plastic Beach and I needed a break from Gorillaz because, we'd been going at it for sort of, 13 years, pretty much non-stop. We did the Monkey Opera, and there were a couple of other projects that we worked on that didn't get off the ground. But I just needed to have a break from doing that sort of stuff, And I did many things. I was painting in oils on canvases, teaching myself to do that. And then I became interested in tarot, and I read Jodorowsky's book, Way of the Tarot, and realized that the existing cards for the Tarot of Marseille, which are based on his findings. And at the same time, I was in the south of France on holiday, and I started drawing pine trees for just, I just picked up my pen and started drawing the pine tree in front of me. And then I became obsessed with pine trees for like 3 months. I probably drew 100 pine trees. And I was also making the movie posters. So I was doing it just for my own pleasure. And then somebody said to me, you really need to do something with this stuff. And I realized that there was a connection between the three things, which is why I was doing them at the same time, which was all about, suggestion. I said, oh, well, I'll do an exhibition, because I've never done one. We went to Saatchi Gallery, and they said, yeah, we'll do it, which was a complete shock to me, because I imagined they'd say, who are you? And it ran for a month. And then they called and said, look, we've had so many people in the gallery and so many young people, and we're thrilled to have young people here at the Saatchi. Can we keep it going for another 2 months? So it ran for 3 months at the Saatchi Gallery, which I was really proud of.
So what are you working on at the moment now?
Well, we're still in the new Gorillaz album cycle for Humans, which is going to take us into next year. Band are touring, doing a world tour, and I'm still supplying artwork and visuals and animations and everything that is required for that, including our own clothing brand, G-Foot, which I've designed all of the clothes for. I'm working on the second season of G-Foot clothes, and we are working on another Gorillaz album, which we're going to be releasing next year. So we're going straight into the next album with no break, which usually we have a good 5-year break between each album, but we decided, you know what, let's keep going because there's ideas for a few more albums. So we're going to go straight into that, and that's going to be all of next year and probably the year beyond that.
So it's going to be mainly Gorillaz for the next few years then?
Yeah, I think by the end of 2019, we're probably going to say, let's have a little break. Or we're going to say, oh, let's keep going. but you know, I'm inventing a new style for the next album. So that in itself is exciting for me because you say, okay, I've done that. How do I do it next time and how do I make it different? So then you explore a new style or a new way of making videos, and then it becomes very exciting again. And obviously, you know, Damon starts sending me demos for new songs quite early on, and that's always very exciting to hear the new direction and the songs that are being made, and, you know, that's what fuels me.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Jamie, and thanks for your time and congratulations on the book.
Thank you. Cheers.
And that was Jamie